You're entering the wind tunnel with Jack Root. No spin, no bull, all Jack. Wind Tunnel is brought to you by
Advance Auto Parts, the official auto parts retailer of NASCAR.
Drivers, start your engines. Let's go. Yeah!
Here is your host, Jack Root.
Hey, welcome back, and thank you for your continued support of this podcast series. Across the nation, motorsports is cranking up, and with IndyCar season now underway, race fans from all disciplines can finally enjoy their favorite sport. We're going to change things up just a bit in this episode, quite frankly, because I'm bored and because I can. So our first guest is in the wings. He is already a winner in 2021.
Look here, Tignal to the outside. That's a 5. Oh, Bourdais hangs tough. Bourdais hangs tough and creates a roadblock. Wow, that was tight. That was so tight. There is a clear winner. Sebastian Bourdais and Mustang Sampling win the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. John Church and the gang celebrate.
And he's about to embark on a full season with AJ Foyt Racing. We welcome Sebastian Bourdais to our get-together. Well, we just heard your victory at the 12 Hours of Sebring. Congratulations on that, my friend.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You have spent an off year running exclusively, with the exception of a few one-offs for AJ Foyt, the IMSA WeatherTech Series, and in sports car racing. What possessed you to get back into IndyCar full-time with AJ?
Well, that was always the plan, to try and get back full-time IndyCar. Obviously, I wasn't quite ready to put an end to my IndyCar career, and it just it got a little messy at the end of 19 and wasn't quite sure it was going to be available and possible for me. But eventually, actually pretty soon after, I got to talk to Larry, and they were pretty excited that I was wanting to be a part of the program, and things were already fairly committed, so we could only do a partial program, which got even more partial because of but also teed us up pretty well for 2021, kind of transitioning with the last few races of 20 into the 21 season, working extensively on simulator work and with the engineers and everybody on board, trying to do the best we can for this upcoming season. So yeah, I mean, IndyCar is my passion. That's where my heart lays, and I got kind of a double passion because I very much enjoy sports car racing. But for as long as I can be competitive and race in IndyCar, that's where I want to be.
So what are the differences between wheeling a sports car and a high horsepower, lots of downforce IndyCar?
A couple seconds. It's not dramatic, but obviously the sports car stuff is heavier, a bit less horsepower and a bit less downforce. So you just take the whole thing and make it a little slower, and that's how it compares. But yeah, for sure in North America there's nothing that goes faster than an Indy car, and it's just a really fun car to drive.
When I spoke to you for our preseason brick by brick special for the NTT IndyCar Series, you really went into a lot of detail and seemed genuinely excited about the gains that AJ and Larry have made with Foyt Racing in the offseason.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we finished the season on a high with St. Pete, finishing 4th, showing some pace, missing out the Fast 6 by nothing, a couple hundreds. I think we've worked very hard. The team's worked very hard. The atmosphere is good. We're trying to prepare the best we can. We've had the arrival of Justin Taylor on top of the existing structure of engineers. And everybody's head down and very focused and excited about 2021. So we'll see how good we get it. But I like the vibe and the fact that everybody's worked hard. And I don't think we feel like we're left anything undone, and that's a feel good moment, and hopefully all that hard work gets rewarded.
Your input, according to Larry Foyt, was invaluable, not only in the immediacy of the end of the season, Seb, but also in setting in motion in his mind what some of the missing parts were to Foyt Racing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I can't talk, for anybody, but like I said, I mean, I really like the synergies and the atmosphere within the team. I think they were looking for a little bit of guidance on a couple of items, especially on the damping side of things. They tried a lot of things and maybe tried a little too hard on a couple of components and things that looked really good on the shaker and didn't necessarily correlate with the track and so we felt probably a little bit victim of that in the Indy GP and didn't really optimize a couple of things during St. Pete Grand Prix. But having able to be working the whole winter with the team, doing some correlation work on the simulator and then working on the shaker very extensively, I think we could definitely cross some numbers and understand why some things look good but didn't feel good in the track and stuff like that. So with all those inerters and stuff that are in the dampers, it gets very complicated very quickly in IndyCar, and you got to be very careful at not just trusting numbers, but also trying to understand why it is that it feels good or doesn't, and makes lap time or doesn't. And I think if anything, that's probably the one kind of place where we may have done the most progress and understanding. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully it pays off.
All right, put your engineering hat on, and let's provide for our listeners dampers for dummies. Can you help a non-educated fan that knows nothing about dampers what on his car that may be akin to?
So yeah, I mean it's very complex to put it in dummies perspective.
Oh, come on, I know you can do this.
But I mean, bottom line, you have the regular shocks that have been developed through many years now. You have basically shim dampers and which are the Penske's, and then valve dampers, which are the Öhlins. For the most part, there are other manufacturers, but those are the two that get used the most and that we use. Then you also have some people that make their own dampers. But that's an all different level of complexity that you throw yourself into, because you kind of throw yourself on an island, and it's great when you get it right because nobody else has access to it, but it's also more work. So we're not there yet. But basically, as you probably remember, back 10 years ago now, the whole mass damper concept started to come along, and basically the inerters, what they call the inerters, those little spinning masses inside the dampers, to try and fight the stiffness of the spring to regain some grip. So running somewhat stiff to control the platform of the car, having less displacement, and being able to cancel that stiffness with those little gimmicks to try and regain the mechanical grip. So basically the best of both worlds, platform control and mechanical grip. We're not allowed to have mass dampers or to have a damper at all as the center element for just heat control on an Indy car. You're only having to implement those concepts into the main dampers. So instead of having a regular through shaft or a regular valve or shim damper that we use in IMSA or most other cars, we're allowed to add an inerter system on the primary dampers, front and rear. So initially it was kind of like, well, man, it's great, but it's really meant to work on eve control, not so much in roll and things like that. So there was obviously a lot of time, money, and resources spent to try and understand, optimize, and make it work on the racetrack, because of obviously the rules just not allowing really the thing to be used the way it was kind of designed initially. But it's very much what IndyCar's game has turned into. Spending a huge amount of time and money trying to correlate. So doing a bit of a shaker test before the event, running the event, and then rerunning the event, trying to understand what worked, how it worked, and doing some track replay. So it's basically what's happening in IndyCar and what the speed difference kind of where it comes from for the most part, because dampers are one of the few things that are pretty open and make a huge difference.
Wow. I'm almost sorry that I asked the question, quite honestly, because
I mean, if you don't want to hear the answer, don't ask the question.
no, that's not what I'm about to say. It's just so complex, and yet it plays such a critical role in the performance of the car. I've heard drivers say you can't go fast in a slow car, and it seems like the direct correlation goes right back to those dampers.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of it. Obviously,
Yeah.
you need the platform right. You need the right geometries, and everything ties together, right? Which is why you come from a team, you try and implement something to a new team. You're always missing a detail, and even engineers that come from one team go to another team sometimes just don't understand why their concept that was working on a car just because like something is a tiny bit different. So sometimes it is very tricky. And of course, between the geometry and the damping of the car, those are the two things that obviously make the car themselves and the setup and the performance of it.
Have you learned how to speak Texan yet?
Nope, I have not. I mean, I've spent fairly little time. I mean, between Risi Competizioni, obviously being based in Texas and joining Foyt, obviously I've been in contact and I've been to Texas a few times, but no, I wouldn't venture calling myself that.
It's been fascinating to watch the transition over there. And you alluded to the fact that they've split their shops. One still remains in Waller, and then they continue to build upon the shop in Speedway, Indiana, just a stone's throw from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Larry Foyt, in my humble opinion, has done a wonderful job without sacrificing some of what I call the pick it up by the bootstraps, common sense approach to racing. Now that you're over there, can you appreciate maybe the challenges that Larry faced as he tried to transition that team?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge balancing act, right? I mean, it would be easier if everything was in Indy, because IndyCar and Indy, it's just, I think back in the day when there were not so many engineers and mechanics were, a little easier to find and stuff. The fact that you were not necessarily in the center of Indy, and teams were, maybe a bit more spread out too. So it was easier to get quality people in different places than Indy. But it appeared very, strongly to Larry and most people involved with the organization that doing it from Texas solely was going to be a massive challenge. It's tough to get people to just kind of go to Texas, move to Texas, establish to Texas, because if things don't work out, well, you have nowhere to go. You've got to move. And if you, built a family, if you got a house, this and that and the other, well, you're pretty much, dead in the water. So it really is the big constraint. And the fact that, the whole month of May, you need some kind of shop anyways to prepare for the 500 and the GP and all of that. So, I mean, Dale does it a little differently. He kind of takes his quarters to the garage in Indy, but, you don't have a machine shop. You don't have anything. If anything goes wrong, you got to make adjustments and things. So Larry surrounded himself with a lot of quality people from Indy. The whole engineering office is in Indy. Scott Horner's done a great job at coming over from Ganassi and building that group with Larry. And it's not easy every day to have, two car built slightly different with the two groups not being in the same shop. But, the most important is that all the engineers are in the same room. And, it obviously gives you a shop when the craziness starts in the month of May.
Look, you've established yourself as a consistent winner in IndyCar. You've established yourself as an absolute first chair when it comes to sports car racing. There are very few that have swept the 12 hours of Sebring, the 24, the Rolex 24, and the 24 hours of Le Mans. What's left on Sebastian Bourdais' bucket list?
I mean, ever since I've come back to the US in 2012, I've had that little dream or goal or crazy goal to try and bring a bit of an underdog to the front of the scene for one reason or another, being money or lack of consistency in the effort or things just not being right. It just hasn't happened. And I feel like there are a lot of elements that are lining up to be able to try and do that with AJ Foyt Racing and trying to build bring the name back to the forefront of the field, which it's been synonymous to for a long time. So hopefully we can do that. That's really kind of my goal. Try and bring my little stone to the edifice and build it and bring it back to where it belongs. But obviously you look at the grid and you got 4 Penske's and you got 4 Ganassis and you got a bunch of Andretti's or affiliates, and obviously Rehol's very strong and McLaren's very strong. So if you just look at the number of quality combinations, things are extremely difficult in the current environment. But history proves in IndyCar, if you got a good guy in the car and the right people around and just enough money to operate and be sensible about it, there are opportunities. So that's my little goal right there.
I appreciate your visiting with us today. Wish you the best of luck, and thanks so much for being in the wind tunnel.
Anytime, Jack.
With Advance Auto Parts, you can get the part you need from the comfort of your garage. We have a wide variety of parts in stock, and you can get them fast. Order online with Advance Same Day and get your part with same-day pickup in-store, same-day curbside, or same-day delivery. It's the fastest way to get the part you need, where you need it, when you need it. Advance your auto at Advance Auto Parts and participate in CarQuest locations. See store for details.
The Wind Tunnel with Jack Root. No spin, no bull, all Jack.
Like springtime flowers, the racing season is in full bloom. Testing, prepping, and anticipation is over. It's time to go racing. Across our country, racing is at full throttle.
White flag in here, 1 to go. Kyle Payne out front.
White flag, one more time around at Talladega.
Second, no more. Scott Dixon wins.
Winning may not be everything.
Out of Maryville, Tennessee, for the first time in his American All-Star Series career, it is Brandon Miller.
But to these drivers, it is the only thing.
And here he comes off the turn 4. Second win of the year. Give it to Harrison Burton.
Joseph Newgarden wins again.
Brad Keselowski wins Bristol. And as they go across the stripe, a photo finish.
Indeed, it is all that really counts. Time for Wind Tunnel's weekly update. It is time for news and notes. The NTT IndyCar Series finally got their season into gear with the running of the Honda Grand Prix of Alabama at Barber Motorsports Park just outside Birmingham.
It's time for the motor racing world to say hello, Palou. Alex Palou wins his maiden IndyCar race.
Checkered flag, baby. You're an Indy winner. Awesome, man. Oh, my God. Amazing. Yes.
It was the Spaniard's first career IndyCar victory in his very first drive for Chip Ganassi. Will Power took home the second spot, while Palou's teammate Scott Dixon finished third. By the way, Sebastian Bourdais, who visited with us in the last segment, took home the fifth spot. There was a ton of NASCAR weekly racing series action over the weekend, and for that, we turn to the host of At the Track on the Performance Racing Network, Lenny Batycki.
Thanks a lot, Jack. This is your NASCAR Advance Auto Parts Weekly Series Race Report. We'll start out in Michigan at Berlin Raceway. Boris Yurkovich got the victory there. Joe Mearns got the checkers at Swan Lake, New York's Bethel Motor Speedway. Cedar Lake Speedway in Wisconsin at James Grossi. Brody Montgomery got the victory at Coos Bay Speedway in Oregon. Timmonsville, South Carolina. Florence Motor Speedway to Zach Miracle. Brett Cresley, a winner at Grandview Speedway in Pennsylvania. Greenville Pickens Speedway, they split their late model races. Ryan Walker took one, so did Randy Porter. How about the former guest here on Wind Tunnel, Rajah Caruth, taking not just one, but both of the late model wins at Hickory Motor Speedway last weekend. Kingsport Speedway to Nick Williams. Peyton Sellers doubled up at South Boston, and at Wake County Speedway in Raleigh, North Carolina, it was Zach Lightfoot. A shout out to Langley Speedway being on Ryan Blaney's car, part of Advance Auto Parts promotion to support the weekly tracks of the NASCAR Advance Auto Parts Weekly Racing Series. And that is your NASCAR Advance Auto Parts Weekly Series Race Report. Please give a follow to PRN's At the Track on Twitter. You can catch our shows at GoPRN.com. Thanks a lot, Jack. So long.
Meanwhile, NASCAR's Camping World Truck Series, as well as NASCAR's Cup Series, held court at the short track known as Richmond Raceway. First up, the trucks, and John Hunter Nemechek came home the winner, with his boss Kyle Busch taking second and Tyler Ankrum third.
It's pretty cool to be able to come out here and do what we did. We had a really fast truck. I'm super proud of all my guys, and it's 2 wins. Hashtag here for wins. Let's go get more.
Sunday saw NASCAR's Elite Cup drivers compete in the Toyota Owners 400, but a late race restart totally changed the outcome.
Hamlin comes to within 2 car lengths. Final corner of 400 laps. Alex Bowman steals one in Richmond. Wow. They rebounded from a pit road penalty at lap 240. I can't to score his 3rd career win.
To be honest with you, we were terrible on short runs, so we restarted 3rd, and I'm like, man, if we get out of here with a solid top 5, we'll be good. Overcome a lot today, and I don't know if Greg pumped the pressures way up or what he did, but that's more grip than I've ever had in a race car at Richmond, and it worked out really well. So getting to race a guy like Denny at a place like this is really cool. Feel like we race each other really clean, so appreciative of that, and means a lot.
After dominating that race, Denny Hamlin did hold on to finish second, with Joey Logano taking home third. And that is this week's News and Notes.
Jeff Striegle has 2 jobs.
Yes.
He'll keep calling races for MRN.
Jeff Gordon across the line.
But now he also has responsibilities as the general manager of Berlin Raceway.
He is a man with 2 jobs, each equally demanding and also equally passion-filled. What do you say? Let's meet Jeff Striegle in this week's Advance Auto Parts Victory Lap.
I'm Kyle Rickey from MRN Radio, the voice of NASCAR. They are the foundation of American motorsports, the launching pad for racing's future. Time now for the Advanced Auto Parts Victory Lap. Brought to you by the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series, driving local racing and local communities forward.
I am really excited to visit with an old friend, Jeff Striegle, who you would think, Jeff, that simply working for MRN as long as you have and being in the anchor booth, that would be enough for you. But you're going home, taking over the general manager duties at your home racetrack, Berlin Raceway to be specific. Are you a glutton for punishment?
What was I thinking, Jackie? Good to be with you, my friend. Well, I don't know what I was thinking. Passion got the best of me. I've been going there for a long time. My dad brought me there in 1975, and Jackie, I was hooked from that point on. And they approached me in December, and I thought about it, and I said, you know what, maybe it's the right time to give this a try. And I dove in with both feet, and I'm there to do everything I can for that track and that community. You know what? We got to celebrate history. And I started digging a little bit, Jackie, and I found out that 11 NASCAR Hall of Famers have raced at one point or another at Berlin Raceway.
How do you serve as a general manager that really will require 110% from Jeff Striegle and then continue as part of the family of the Motor Racing Network?
I knew that I had to build a team that I could count on when I wasn't there. It's going to come down to teamwork, Jackie, and you've been there. You know how important that is. I have to be able to rely on the people that are there when I'm not there. It's going to be hard.
There's a benefit to your first job. You get to travel.
Yeah.
And I know when I traveled almost every week, it gave me the opportunity to visit other short tracks and steal their ideas.
Sure.
What about you?
We do see things, and we do see things that work, and we see things that don't work. But what's important is we see things that are being tried. And those that are successful, certainly I am trying to emulate that back at the Berlin Raceway, because you know as well as I do, it's not just open the gates and let the competitors in, let the folks into the grandstands. We race, we all go home. Those days are long gone. You and I both know that we have to entertain our audience if we expect them to come back with more than just racing.
I want to circle back to MRN. Some of your great moments, some of the great calls, the call that was done by your guys when Michael McDowell upset the world just a couple of months ago and winning the Daytona 500. But every announcer has deep down inside one or two that are, as they used to say on Saturday Night Live, extra special. What about you?
Man, I don't know. I can give you moments that I'll never forget. I'll give you a funny. How's this? We were doing, it was the Daytona 500. I was in turn 4. And it was kind of where the term "and others" got coined, because, I've been calling Harvick. Harvick had been right there all afternoon long. And it's a car, as you know, Jackie, you're going to recognize him. Well, it happened to be a deal where maybe it was Gordon and Johnson out front, and I pick them up at midway through 3 and 4, and I've got Gordon on the inside, Johnson on the outside, and right behind is and I'm looking right at him. Yeah. And it was one of those deals where, it's like, just let go of the button, just stop talking. And I just kept going, and others, they were already back to the tri-oval, and we went to a commercial break, and I think it was either Joe Moore or Barney Hall that said, "Hey, Jeff, do you want to tell us who the "and others" is?" And I'm like, it was Harvick, and I'll never forget that moment. Just one of those things where you're embarrassed. You just said, you tell yourself, let go of the button, stop talking. But you know as well as I do, Jackie, that's easier said than done.
You mentioned Barney Hall. Ken Squire and Barney Hall, really, along with Roger Bear, were the folks that, after Bill France Sr. gave them the job, created the Motor Racing Network. You had the opportunity, just as I did, to work side by side with Barney. What was your biggest takeaway from him?
His leadership, his leadership as a friend, as a mentor, as a coach. I remember a time in Pocono where I had made a mistake on Kyle Petty's car. It was qualifying. It didn't really even mean anything. And back then, I'd take my headset off and I'd rant and rave. And Barney looked at me and he said, "Boy, let me tell you something. If that's how you're going to react every time you make a mistake, you might as well turn around and walk out that door." He goes, "Because we're always going to make mistakes and we can't act like you're acting." He said, "So put your headset back on, sit back down, and let's call this qualifying." I'll never forget that moment. And I'll never forget the moment that he came up to me at Darlington when he said, "Boy," he always used to say that,
yes, yes,
that.
Indeed. Yeah.
And he said, "I'm not going to be doing this for very much longer." And he said, I'd really like to see you have the opportunity to step in when I'm done." And I will never forget that moment in Darlington, South Carolina. We rode together to the track. It was just him and I. And when we got to the track, he got out and walked into the trailer, and I sat in my car for, Jackie, I'll bet it was 20 minutes before I could get out. I just was trying to process from Barney Hall what he had just said. I didn't know that it was ultimately going to work out that way, but just the fact that he had said what he had said to me, that is a moment in a time that I will never forget.
The Motor Racing Network crew has expanded from just the word pictures for specific events. MRN.com has a plethora. That was my word for the day, Jeff.
I like it.
On my calendar of podcasts and recordings. My question to you is, how good is it to spend weekend after weekend with that type of passionate crew? Tell me a funny story.
And people who have followed me on Twitter know this, and you do as well. They are my brothers and sisters. They truly, truly are. We can say it and people can roll their eyes. Well, and you've told this story before. We spend more time together than I certainly do with my brother or my sister. There are times when I spend more times with them than I do with my own wife and my own family. And we all hate it when we have to say goodbye to somebody. I mean, look at Joe Moore. Look at Barney, look at Winston Kelly, my dear friend Winston.
Yeah.
You always get to the track and you look around and you're like, it's not the same without them. But then there is a new talent stepping in, hoping to replace that person that we had to say goodbye to, whether that be Barney Hall or you, Eli. The names that have been with the network are synonymous with motorsports, and you just pride yourself to be a part of that great team.
I couldn't have said it any better. Jeff, it's a real treat. I wish we had more time because you and I could tell a ton of stories over the years at MRN. Thanks so much, man.
You bet, Jackie. Anytime. I love it. Thanks. Have a great day.
Be sure to join us again next week for another trip to racing's grassroots with the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Victory Lap. Brought to you by the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series, advancing the next generation of drivers and champions. I'm Kyle Rickey from the Motor Racing Network.
We're hitting the brakes, but we'll be back on track after this. Coming up next.
Why I'm not on one of his sponsorship deals for golf clubs or as a PGA member, really. That's what I want to know is once I retire from racing, what's it going to take to be part of his company to sponsor me for the tour?
You're going to have to get better at golf, Allmendinger. As much golf as you play, you should be under par. So if you want a sponsor deal, suck it up and get better.
That's the pressing question AJ Allmendinger wants answered from our next guest, Kevin Harvick. He joins us next, right here on Jackaroot's Wind Tunnel.
With Advance Auto Parts, you can get the part you need from the comfort of your garage. We have a wide variety of parts in stock, and you can get them fast. Order online with Advance Same Day and get your part with same-day pickup in-store, same-day curbside, or same-day delivery. It's the fastest way to get the part you need, where you need it, when you need it. Advance your auto at Advance Auto Parts and participating CarQuest locations. See store for details.
Back straightaway, final time. Kevin Harvick is about to become the 14th driver in NASCAR Cup history to reach 50 career victories, breaking a tie with Tony Stewart for 14th. Harvick wins NASCAR's return to action at Darlington.
All right, let's close this show with a visit from a guy whose nickname is the Closer. He's from Bakersfield, California, has 2 Cup championships to his credit, as well as a win in the 2017 Great American Race, the Daytona 500. He drives for Stewart-Haas Racing. He is Kevin Harvick. Hey, Kevin, thanks a lot for joining us inside the wind tunnel.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Take a look at your career, and with 2 decades of experience and with the transition that seems to be not only at Stewart-Haas Racing, but across the board in the Cup level, you all of a sudden have become the alpha dog at Stewart-Haas. So I wonder, with all that experience, how much input and exchange do you have in trying to give some of these new drivers a lot of the wisdom that you had to learn the hard way on the racetrack?
Yeah, well, that's the strange part. I think as you look at how these young kids come into the sport in today's world, it's trial by fire. And Chase Briscoe is the most recent example of coming into a situation where the cars aren't running like they're supposed to. You can't go practice. You're trying to learn the racetracks. You never run a race in your life that's as long as every race is on a weekly basis. And you immediately have to learn how to deal with everything that comes with trying to make race cars go faster, trying to deal with the politics of the sport, the media, the questions, and everything that comes with being in the limelight. So it's a tough world for a young racer to come in. And I think when you look at Chase Elliott and you look at Ryan Blaney and some of the other young guys that are going to be stars in this sport for a long time, it still takes them 3 or 4 years to get in here and really figure it out in today's world, because the Xfinity Series is not that it's not competitive. It's just not like it used to be, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have, 10 or 12, 15 Cup guys there and learning where you actually measure up, to the Cup level competition and learning things at a more rapid pace than probably at a much slower pace than what you used to, because of the fact that those guys aren't in the field. And you really get a crash course in that when you get to the Cup level, because it just has a way of teaching you things, and you have to be in the middle of it in order to learn it. So it's it's a different world than what I grew up in and how I came into the sport. Because if there was a racetrack that you weren't good at, you just scheduled a test at it and you put all the data on there and you went with your teammate and you figured it out. And now, you have to go to the simulator and you have to look at video and you have to look at data and you have to try to figure it out through the SMT data and all the things, that come along with today's world. It's not necessarily on the racetrack. So it's, I think as you look at, where we are at Stewart-Haas Racing, we're obviously looking for some speed in our cars. But the things that I can tell you can survive until they figure that out. And survival is something that also has to be learned. And you have to learn how to race for 10th sometimes and be able to finish 10th, in order to get the points that you need, so you don't put yourself in such a hole that you can't get out of it. So there's a number of different ways that you have to be able to race. You can be the leader, you can be the 10th place guy. But no matter what, if you're wrecked, you're just going to be in the back and watching the race and trying to get a bigger shovel to dig all the dirt out of the hole that you're in. So it's a very difficult environment for young guys to come in and learn how to be winners.
You mentioned data. Certainly there has been an increase almost to the point where there's so much more data, it can be overwhelming. That's a difference from when you started. But also, like Formula One, teams are now using war rooms that are off campus.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to go back to the data, because I think that's one problem that a lot of the young guys have, is almost trying to do too much. Mm-hmm. And, it's the throttle, brake, steering, and speed, and that's pretty much where you need to draw the line. And that, there are some instances where I'll get involved deeper than that, but from a driver standpoint, that's really as deep as you need to take it, unless there's a summary below the graph that you don't really understand, to make sure that you keep it as real as possible and stay inside your boundaries of what you're needed for, as far as the equation and how it needs to be solved. So, that's one thing that can be overwhelming as a young guy, because sometimes they try to do too much. The war room is very interesting because of the fact that it's really an extension of the pit box. Mm-hmm. And, you have a very quiet, calm environment that allows, the engineers and folks that are in this room to really analyze and look at things that you don't have time to look at on the pit box. And, a lot of people ask me, why are you so quiet on the radio now? Well, I couldn't stand the, being in trouble all the time. It was getting expensive and he just looked like a complete fool. So, I try to say as little as possible on the radio, but really if I'm needed, I'm needed for a reason. And if they ask me a question, it's because they need to have another opinion on what the direction is in a particular situation. So usually the war room has more information than we can process on the pit box. And for sure, I'm just in the way in the car unless my job is to deliver the information about how the car is handling. If they have an opinion, they will ask me. But all the hardcore information comes from atop the pit box and in the war room, because they just have more information than I have inside the car. But it takes a long time to learn that. You want to have an opinion and you want to gripe about everything, but they're spur of the moment. You got to be. It's a decision that happens right now, and sometimes that war room, comes into play more than not, just because of the fact that it's just a very calm environment with, it's Moneyball, right? They've got the graphs, they've got the facts, they've got the history of the race. And a lot of times it falls into that. And sometimes it's a guess, but it's a very educated guess as far as that goes.
I try to make it akin to what the viewers on Fox see when Larry Mack inserts his thoughts. He's got an abundance of that same data. Listen, before we run out of time here, I want to switch gears and look at Kevin Harvick away from the racetrack. We've seen your son go and follow in your footsteps. His karting career is on hold right now because he got injured. But I wonder, how hard is it for you to hold back and let him learn the same way you did, and that's by trial and error?
Well, that took a minute to figure out that balance between being dad, but also, I think it's really important to overload him with information. He has to be a kid, but in the end, you're also there to race, and you have to have the information, and you have to be able to process that information. And the go-karting world is no different than our world. There's information. There's brake sensors, throttle sensors, steering sensors, mile per hour sensors, and you can learn a lot. And he's very, very good at processing some of that information with the overloading of information that we give him. So I'm of the opinion that he has to be held accountable for his mistakes. It can't be all roses all the time, right? And like, you have to in my opinion, the kids don't get held accountable enough for the mistakes that they made, and then they don't progress like they need to. So I push him hard, and I feel like we've found a good balance in him understanding that I'm going to love him no matter what when we get done with this race. But while we're at this racetrack, we need to take it serious, and we're going to have fun, but we're going to have a lot more fun if you're winning than you are if you're running fifth. I can promise you that. It'll be much more rewarding winning a race than it will running fifth. So he's adapted to getting out of the go-kart, talking with the mechanic, coming in, looking at the video, and then coming back after about 15 minutes when Dad has the computer out with all the graphs pulled up, because it usually takes me about that long to figure out how to turn the damn computer on and get all the graphs downloaded. And if something goes wrong, it's an hour. So, but we spend a lot of time looking at graphs, and I think for us, finding that balance between being dad, and being a good coach and trying to teach him, but also hold him accountable for the things is a little bit difficult. But I think that balance is there, and I think for us, trying to manage him manage an 8-year-old is the biggest part of the process, and in order to make sure he's fed, make sure he doesn't wear himself out, make sure he's paying attention, don't leave the trailer, all the things that you used to think your dad was a complete jerk about, now you're doing the same thing. So we have fun with it, and he enjoys it. That's the main thing, is he has to enjoy it, because the amount of information that we load on him is not normal. But we're going to continue to do that, because I think that's an important piece of the puzzle as you move forward.
Does he critique you after each race that you compete in?
So I came home from the Bristol dirt race, and he knows that I'm not, like, I wasn't super excited about going to the Bristol dirt race. I had a great time by the time it was all said and done, because it wasn't a dirt late model race or something that I had to throw the car completely sideways. I got to sit in my seat. I got to hold my steering wheel. I got to sit in the environment that I was used to on a weekly basis. And it wasn't anything like, I expected it to do, and I had a great time. But I came home, I walked in the door, and he was sitting at the counter, and he looked at me, and he's like, wow. He's like, you really, really suck at dirt racing, Dad. He's like, you might want to go practice a little bit more, because that was absolutely pathetic. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. I said that I get it. I said, this is your opportunity to critique me the same way that I critique you. So I'm fine with that. So and you know what? I could have done a lot better, Keelan. You're right. I could have done a lot better at the dirt track, and I will do better next time that we go back. So he definitely takes his shots every chance that he gets.
Hey, listen, we do appreciate your carving out some time to visit with us, and best wishes not only for this season, but for the seasons thereafter.
All right, Jack. Thanks for having me.
With Advance Auto Parts, you can get the part you need from the comfort of your garage. We have a wide variety of parts in stock, and you can get them fast. Order online with Advanced Same Day and get your part with same-day pickup in-store, same-day curbside, or same-day delivery. It's the fastest way to get the part you need, where you need it, when you need it. Advance your auto at Advance Auto Parts and participate in CarQuest locations. See store for details.
That's a wrap for this week. Hey, my thanks to Sebastian Bourdais, Jeff Striegle, and of course, Kevin Harvick. Remember to follow us on our social media sites and check out our new YouTube channel, Jackaroot's Wind Tunnel. Questions, comments, brickbats, and bouquets can reach us at our Gmail address. That's jackarootswindtunnel@gmail.com. I really hope you enjoyed this week's episode and encourage you to pass on to your friends the download site for it. If you haven't yet subscribed, I encourage you to do so. That way, you'll automatically be notified when a new episode is up and ready for you to listen. Enjoy your week, and be sure to come back next week for more from Jackaroot's Wind Tunnels.
Today's trip to the Wind Tunnel was brought to you by
Advance Auto Parts, the official auto parts retailer of NASCAR.